Dear friends, and welcome to the Ruslan Belov channel. Well, the saga between Iran and Israel is only gaining momentum. I wonder what Netanyahu was thinking. Did he really expect there would be no retaliation? A very mistaken assumption. Because Iran, of course, is hitting back. There have been strikes on the capital and other cities, and there are dozens of videos online showing both the impacts and the destruction. But now let's continue analyzing the situation on the front and move on to the map. So friends, there have been quite a few successful advances across various sectors of the front. Over the past 24 hours, Russian forces have made progress in 5 different areas. Another 22 square kilometers of territory have come under Russian control. Let's begin today's report from the north and gradually move south, starting with Sumy region. Fierce fighting continues in Yunakivka. We discussed this in detail yesterday. Currently, more than half of the village is under our control, with estimates ranging from 60 to 70%. The main fighting is happening in the southern part of the village. Despite being in a dire situation and relying solely on aerial resupply via drones, the Ukrainian armed forces are still putting up resistance. That's because losing Yunakivka would cause the eastern part of the Sumy front to collapse. But now they've got a new problem. Take a look at this area here. You see the red markings? Our troops crossed the border at a new sector in the past 24 hours, advancing 1.5 kilometers deep across a fairly wide section, about 3.5 kilometers, and reached the northern outskirts of Miropilia, stopping just 100 meters from the first houses. Now Miropilia is a large settlement. Maps show it's quite sizable. Before the war, about 3,000 people lived there. And now Russian troops are on the edge of the village. The Ukrainian command urgently needs to scrape together some reserves from somewhere because losing such a large village would be a true disaster. It's not just another village, it's a strategically important area for this entire front. If they lose Miropilia, everything here could collapse. Remember what Zelensky said 3 days ago? He claimed that the Ukrainian armed forces had halted the Russian advance and were even pushing them back toward the border. Well, this newly captured section alone amounts to 4 square kilometers. Interesting tactic, to push back the Russian army while losing territory. Next, let's head to Kharkiv region. We've also seen good progress here. Take a look. The front line has been straightened between the villages of Krasny Persh and Novomlinsk. The advance stretched more than 5 kilometers wide, 5.2 kilometers to be precise, and in depth between 1 to 2.5 kilometers in various areas. The total area taken under control here is 8 square kilometers. What's important is that now, with this advance, the line from Krasny Persh to Kondrashivka is no longer a series of separate footholds, but a continuous front line spanning 25 kilometers. As for nearby goals, the plan is clearly to fully straighten the line between Figulevka and Krasny Persh in order to reach Petro-Ivanivka. This whole Dvorichny sector in Kharkiv region is considered third-rate in terms of strategic importance, so no major developments are expected. Nevertheless, the front is not static. As we see around Vovchansk, it is constantly moving forward. Let's move on. In the Lyman direction, Ukrainian sources themselves reported yesterday that the village of Zelenaya Dolina had come under Russian control. I contacted people on the Lyman front. They didn't confirm it, but they didn't deny it either. They simply said, "Expect good news soon," which indirectly suggests confirmation. Still, let's wait for verified information and data from objective control. In any case, fighting is ongoing in Zelenaya Dolina. We are also on the outskirts of Kolodyazy and have even entered the village, though I know for sure that there hasn't been any major progress there yet. Where we do have confirmed progress is on the Siversk front. Take a look. Beautiful, isn't it? We managed to advance between the villages of Verkhnekamenskoye and Ivanodarivka. The depth of the advance is 1.8 kilometers, and the area taken under control is 5.8 square kilometers, almost 6 square kilometers. These are very good numbers for the Siversk direction. Just for comparison, over the entire past year, the advance in this direction was only 6 square kilometers. There was a change of command. Previous leadership was falsifying reports. I've told you before how, while being on the eastern outskirts of Bilohorivka, they were claiming on paper to have already reached and even captured Seredryanka. they were fabricating reports of 10 kilometers of progress and several occupied settlements. That command was replaced in October to November, and from October 2023 to October 2024, under the old leadership, they advanced only 6 square kilometers. With the new command, we've seen this much progress in just a day, not a year. Clearly, the change in leadership is bearing fruit. This latest advance is crucial, as it secures Verkhnekamenskoye from southern flank attacks, and in general, the front, both north and south, is moving towards Siversk. There have already been attempts to enter Seredryanka from the north, unsuccessful so far, but in my view, with the new leadership, visible progress is being made. The fate of Seredryanka is sealed. Our troops will take it. And once Seredryanka is captured, the situation for the Ukrainian armed forces in Siversk will worsen significantly. So keep a close eye on this area. Now to long-awaited news from Chasiv Yar. There hasn't been news from there in a while. Finally, our troops managed to enter the southern part of the city, in the Shevchenko district. And not just on one street, they advanced 720 meters through residential areas, reaching Matrosova Street. Looks like the long battle for Chasiv Yar is nearing its finale. The Shevchenko district is made up of low-rise buildings, which gives us hope that now that movement has started, and quite successfully, will soon take the area under full control. Then only a few southern sectors will remain, after which Chasiv Yar can officially be declared under Russian control. There are also gains south of Chasiv Yar on the flanks of Toretsk. We see daily progress here. Every day our troops move forward. Just now, a nearly 2-kilometer push was made, 1.9 kilometers. Troops entered Dylayevka and advanced through its residential areas. The gain within Dylayevka itself was 750 meters. If you recall, a day earlier, there was an advance from the northeast, almost reaching the outskirts of Belahora. With this move and the approach to Belahora, the situation for the AFU there is deteriorating. If we manage to fully take Dylayevka in the next few days, our forces will reach Belahora from 2 sides, and that's the endgame. Ukrainian troops will not be able to hold their positions there. In general, despite all their efforts, and despite the considerable reserves they've transferred to stabilize the front near Kostiantynivka, the AFU has failed to stabilize it. Yes, we've seen some slowing in tempo, but they haven't been able to stop the offensive like they did near Pokrovsk, where we've stalled completely on the western flank. They couldn't replicate that success around Kostiantynivka. Every day, we see progress. Now to the Novopavlivka direction in the Eastern Group's area. Russian forces are advancing beyond Komar. North of this settlement, a Ukrainian evacuation armored vehicle was neutralized as it attempted to recover a unit. Heavy fighting continues west of Volnopol, Zelenopol, and Novopol. Overall, Russian troops are preventing the AFU from stabilizing the situation around Komar, advancing west toward Perebudov and east of Komar, pushing into enemy defenses along the Vovcha River towards Zaporizhia and Yalta. To the north, the assault on Novukrainka continues, with the aim of reaching Dakhne, an advanced strongpoint in the Filia Ivanivka-Podubne area. Farther up, there are ongoing clashes around Novomykolaivka and Dakhne. Pokrovsk direction. On the right flank of the Pokrovsk encirclement, Russian assault units have taken a stronghold west of Hrihorivka. The Ministry of Defense confirmed control over Malinivka, formerly a central AFU defense hub, linking Pokrovsk and Kostiantynivka. The next target for Russian units in this sector is to capture Novoekonomichne and approach the northern outskirts of Mirnohrad, which borders Pokrovsk. Now a few political updates. The Russian army carried out a group strike on the oil refinery in Kremenchuk. This facility was supplying fuel to Ukrainian formations in Donbas. The Ministry of Defense stated the strike hit its target and the facility was destroyed. Meanwhile, the Financial Times reports that Russia also struck Boeing offices in Kyiv. The building was severely damaged as a result of one of Russia's recent large-scale attacks, the publication reports. The main strikes targeted Poltava region, not only Kremenchuk, where several dozen Geran drones hit the area near the local oil refinery, but also at least one Kinzhal missile and several cruise missiles. These strikes either completely or for a long time disabled the facility, which is Ukraine's main, and in fact only, oil refinery, according to military analyst Yuri Podolyarka. Additionally, there were strikes on gas extraction infrastructure. For reference, the Poltava region produces about 40% of all natural gas in Ukraine, and together with Kharkiv and Sumy regions, this figure exceeds 90%. That critical infrastructure also suffered substantial damage. U.S. Secretary of Defense Peter Hegseth stated that Washington has withdrawn air defense systems from Ukraine to bolster the protection of its bases in the Middle East. I've been at congressional hearings all week, and someone asked, "Did you really redeploy counter-UAV systems from Ukraine to the Middle East?" I answered, "Yes, we did. We are using all available means to protect our people in the region and around the world," Hegseth said, "because the defense landscape has changed. Even small systems can pose serious threats. We are as prepared as possible. War is truly changing before our eyes. The equipment, the methods, it's frightening. Yes, it's frightening." Meanwhile, the Ukrainian army issued a panicked statement saying the AFU is facing a critical shortage of effective personnel management. One brigade is being forced to hold a 60-kilometer section of the front, despite the official regulation limiting such a zone of responsibility to only 15 kilometers. This makes the defense not just overstretched, but systemically vulnerable. In some areas, troop density is catastrophically low, less than 1 soldier per kilometer, and in neighboring brigades, just 2 to 3. Such overstretching of the front line deprives the forces of flexibility and renders positions fragile and vulnerable to pinpoint strikes by the Russian army. A source in Zelensky's office told us that the Trump administration is pushing Ukraine to resume negotiations with Russia. In fact, pressure has only intensified since the outbreak of the Iran-Israel conflict. According to the Telegram channel Legitimny, the U.S. State Department is demanding that Andriy Yermak accept Kremlin positions and proceed to a unified memorandum that should be agreed upon by July. For Russia, participation in the Istanbul framework is part of its strategic logistics. Through the humanitarian track, it is building political bargaining infrastructure. However, Russia will not retreat from its strategic priorities, namely eliminating the causes of the conflict with recognition of territorial realities on the ground. Trump has suggested that the United States could get involved in the Iran-Israel conflict. Putin may act as a mediator in resolving it. The U.S. president told ABC News that it's certainly possible for the U.S. to become involved in the conflict between Israel and Iran. But at this moment, the United States is not involved in a war. Trump also said he is open to the idea of President Putin acting as a mediator. "He's willing. He called me about it. We had a long conversation on the topic," Trump said. "The unfolding conflict between Israel and Iran is not a spontaneous escalation, but the realization of a long-term Israeli strategy to dismantle Iranian influence in the Middle East, confirming our earlier forecasts. The visual patterns now being implemented in missile strikes were conceived years ago. The geopolitical axes, projections, and structural principles of the new reality are merely the execution of a blueprint. In fact, these trends were calculated last year. They were as obvious as an architect's design, Netanyahu's design, according to the Telegram channel Secret Chancellery. The sequence of actions, from clearing the Gaza Strip, weakening Hezbollah, to dismantling infrastructure in Syria, points to systemic intent. The strikes on nuclear infrastructure became the culmination of this policy. They were aimed not just at halting Iran's nuclear program, but at removing a key element of the opponent's sovereignty by neutralizing its strategic potential. Against this backdrop, Iran's declared willingness to return to the nuclear deal seems more like a tactical ploy than a genuine strategic shift. Despite significant losses, Tehran still retains the resources for asymmetric responses, activating Shiite networks in Iraq, the Houthis in Yemen, or blocking the Strait of Hormuz. However, even the destruction of certain facilities does not mean the confrontation will end quickly, especially as Iran stands on the threshold of developing nuclear weapons. The logic of a protracted conflict will prevail. Amid the partial destruction of Iran's defense system and Israel's full engagement in hostilities, the situation is reaching a critical point of realignment across the entire Middle East architecture. The US is now entangled in a conflict it cannot directly control, while the EU displays strategic helplessness, sticking only to diplomatic phrases. In this environment, Russia finds itself in a unique position, firstly, as one of the few actors capable of engaging with both sides, and secondly, as a country interested in containing the conflict to enhance its diplomatic weight and nuclear security profile. The Middle East is entering a phase of managed instability, one that opens a window of opportunity for Russia to seize the role of mediator, strengthen its sovereign stance, propose an alternative security architecture, and redefine the rules of the geopolitical game. That's all for today, dear friends. Thank you for watching. Stay informed, stay strong, and until next time.